I want to explore the idea of perfectionism and extremism. I recently got done watching Stardusk's new video on extremism and took away from that Stardust believes he is an extremist at heart and that can only see things in extremes, one end to another. It's got me thinking about about the role of extremism, why as a survival strategy extremism would exist. And I think this ties in also with the idea of perfectionism and essentially one of the aspects of MGTOW that I would like to explore is why we believe that perfectionism and extremism are models that can exist within MGTOW when they're so clearly designed for blue pill life. So in order to do this, I want to explain a couple of examples of how I think this can be best understood. The first is that of a salesman. For anyone that's done sales or worked in sales, you know there are a few environments and a few models that can be used to pay you for your work. One that most people encounter is you work in a shop and you're paid a flat salary, and sales that you make are irrelevant to your salary. You may work 8 hours in a shop and not see a customer all day, and you will be paid. At the other extreme of that, you've got commission-led jobs, and the one that most people think about with that is door-to-door canvassers or telesales people who are paid for converting people that were unaware of an opportunity into sales, and the job itself is particularly difficult from a motivation point of view, because the number of no's to yeses is very high. The conversion ratio of a door-to-door canvassing salesman is mind-bogglingly underwhelming. If you knock on someone's door on spec and try and issue a service for money, the prospects of you actually getting money are remote. But some people do it and they make money at it. The compromise position is something you often get in high-end goods shops, or shops where people are already aware of the product. What you'll quite often see there is a low salary and then a commission structure built into that. And I think the reason that this is possibly the best way of doing retail from the point of view of an employee, at least, is that you are guaranteed some money, but you're also potentially going to get lots of money. Not as much as your door-to-door salesman, but a whole lot more than if you were on a flat salary if you're good at the job. So I want to explore that. Now let's say you work in a shop that sells surfboards and skateboards and rollerblades and longboards and whatever, extreme sports, outdoor equipment. People that walk into your shop can be typically sort of chucked into two categories. They're people who are there without money to spend today, and there are people that are there with money to spend today. Your future prospects, there's no time on that. I mean, they could be rich tomorrow. They could come back tomorrow. Or they could be dreaming of a better life, or a life where they can buy a skateboard and go join the pros. In the future, some indeterminate amount of time has passed, they'll come back and buy product from you. Perhaps they're just curious and they want to explore the fantasy a little more. But anyway, these people aren't what pays your wage, and these are the people that are represented in your flat rate of salary, essentially, because the business is relying on those people becoming future sales. But the present sales, that's what I'm interested in discussing now. A future sale is what we call a warm sale. This is someone who has money, already wants to buy, and just wants to be talked into it, really. They want to feel good about the decision. Now, for sure, there are a lot of people who already know that they want to buy something, and the process of selling to these people is irrelevant. They already have the money. They're practically holding it in their hand when they walk through the door. And if these people are asked about their interaction with the salesman, they quite often display frustration because they don't want sales patter. They don't want to be coddled into buying because they already have decided to buy. The job of the salesman in that case is to recognize this fact and literally just to process the sale as smoothly as possible. Now, some salesmen will push their luck and will try and coerce these guaranteed hot sales into larger sales, and essentially risk their future loyalty. And you can end up with situations where people have buyer's remorse upon leaving. But that's neither here nor there. I'm sure that's a hot topic on someone's radar, but not particularly on mine. But what I'm interested in is people who are warm. They're warm to the idea. They're wandering in. They've got money. They want to spend it somewhere, and one of the places that they might like to spend it is in your shop. And if you can convince them that their money will be best spent on a new skateboarding setup, and then you can add to that a helmet with a GoPro mount on it, or safety first, some kind of pads and such, then these things are your commission. These products are your bread and butter, essentially. You bought bearings, wheels, new types of grips. I'm not an expert on skateboarding by any means, but the point is that your core product is quite often what they want, and the extras and add-ons that you might conceivably want after you've bought the core product are what the salesman is intending to have you walk out the door with then. So it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act between having somebody walk out happy with what they've bought so that they'll come back in the future, and making enough money to sustain the business in order to do that process in the first place. Your commission is based on the number of extra pounds or dollars or yen or whatever the hell that you're able to extract from that sale. That's your reward. And the model works pretty well on the whole, I think. People are used to going into supermarkets and just picking up things, putting them in a trolley and then paying for them. Nobody ever tries to barter with you on price, or coerce you into buying other things. There are, of course, deals and special offers and things on the end of shelves and your eye line. And anybody that's gone into a supermarket for a particular product will know the frustration they have in actually finding it amongst the cacophony of other information that's coming to them, because supermarkets are doing their marketing by making things present. They're not selling thousands and thousands of this obscure thing that you're looking for. They're selling soft drinks and alcohol and chocolate. So that's the stuff that's on display. You want the meat, you want the pasta, you want the bright red tomato sauce. I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but the point is, everyone sells to you. In a shop where you're selling specialist goods, you're playing a game of risk and reward with the safety net of having a flat salary. As a salesman, your job it has a guaranteed payout, but your potential is limited only to the number of sales that you can process. I probably waffled on enough about the sales example without actually stating the comparison. But so here it is: the perfectionist salesman will not last. Not everyone that walks through the door is going to reward you with the maximum sale, the best sale you've ever had. You cannot move from epic sale to epic sale continually, and everyone knows this. Everyone that works in sales knows that it's not possible. You're going to get some no's. You're going to get some bad weeks where there's not enough people coming in to even make that possible, and there's going to be some weeks where you do incredibly well. And the thing that saves a salesman from essentially being cast aside or replaced or surviving, let's say, is the acknowledgement that your performance and the reward that you receive for that performance aren't directly tied. You might try incredibly hard one week and be rewarded. You might try incredibly hard another week and not be rewarded. You might not try and be rewarded, and you might not try and not be rewarded. How do you respond to these four different sort of extremes, these four different axes, I guess, or coordinates on an axis of performance and reward, effort and reward? If you are a perfectionist, then you're assuming that there is a direct correlation between effort and reward. But in sales, there isn't a direct relationship between effort and reward. There's some correlation. There's definitely some correlation, but it's not very tight. As I said, you can try really hard and do badly, and you can sometimes not try and do very well. A perfect example of when this might happen is Christmas. At Christmas, people want to buy things, and if you can do a worse week in the run up to Christmas than in January, for instance, then there's something going incredibly wrong. Christmas is when money is spent, especially on stuff like skateboards. That is the week that all those things are sold. I mean, yeah, there's a pickup in summer, but that's just the nature of the beast. If you're dealing with, say, music or well, not that there's music stores anymore, but if you're dealing with something for the home, something that can only really be enjoyed indoors, then Christmas is the week for you, and you will have a better bad week in the run up to Christmas than you will have a great good week in the middle of summer when nobody wants to stay indoors. So, you know, your effort is not directly related to your reward, not to the point where you have any meaningful influence over it. Now, why am I bringing this up? I know I'm 15 minutes into this already, and I perhaps haven't stated what I'm getting at. The perfectionist will assume that their efforts, their successes are something that's within the scope of their agency. An extremist is a similar thing. You think that extreme performance will grant extreme reward, and it doesn't. I mean, it might, but it doesn't, definitely. So, here's the crux of the matter. When we're talking about men and women and their roles to each other, we quite often think of these in terms of the services a man provides to a woman and the services that a woman provides to a man. Now, the services that a woman provides to a man are progeny, basically. That's what we want from women when it comes down to it. We want children. Men want children. And I know there are many men who don't want children. I'm one of them, actually, but the point is that everything derived from interactions with women on an intimate nature, sex and so on, these are all born out of a want for children, a biological need and strivance for access to a uterus. That's why you're drawn to bums and tits and curves. That's the point. You want children. But you want children for your efforts, right? So I think men have this internal dialogue when considering their prospects of getting some woman pregnant so that they can have a kid. They don't want it for nothing. I mean, you want the world to make sense. You want patterns to agree with the data. And if you're just coming back from work, from your sales position, having had the worst week in the worst month that you've ever had, then you aren't going to want to be rewarded for that with a child. And even if you can separate in your mind the idea that a child costs money and that's why you were there and so on, and just put it down to, you know, did I succeed in some endeavour? Did I do well? And do I deserve this reward? Then most people will say no. I feel that most people will say no. They want the reward, the thing that they're striving towards, to mean something, to be tied to some other event. Want to have that correlation of cause and effect. Even if the cause and the effect are completely separable, as they are with, you know, resource gathering or sales in this example, and having progeny. The two aren't directly related. There's so many other factors influencing it. If, on the other hand, you had the best week of the best month of the best year of your life ever, then you might very well be buoyed by that success and want to have children at that point. You feel that your efforts, which are rewarded in terms of money, should be tied to some other kind of tangible reward. And I think that's normal. So, why the commission and why the sales example? Well, you don't have dominion over the results with commission. You can affect them, but you can't determine the outcome by your own efforts. There are other things to consider. As I've previously stated, the outcome of your effort isn't directly related to the reward you receive. That's fine. That's fine. What about with women? What about with progeny? What about seeking that child that you want? Well, women get pregnant. That pregnancy lasts for 9 months, and you would guess that a period of about 3 to 6 months after that, for sort of internal repair and so on, would be preferable. Essentially, women can have 1 pregnancy to full term per year. Also, they're not fertile from 1 week to the next, 1 day to the next. The menstrual cycle, we all know this. And the other thing we know is that it's taboo for a man to know. Which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Because if you're in an exchange of, if you're in a trade situation with a woman, if you want to think about, just the work that you're doing and the reward that you're looking for a woman, then you are essentially working for children. That's what you're doing. But the payout only comes within a couple of weeks of a month, and only within 1 month of a year. The maximum period of fertility for a woman is restricted to a week or 5 days. I think it's a very short period of time. What would it do to a man to know when that was? I mean, if you were working for if you were working every week for a month with the same effort in order to gain access to a fertile female, and you knew that only the second week was the fertile one, the third week was touch and go, and the other 2 weren't worth touching, you wouldn't try, would you? You'd be like, well, I'll take it easy for the first week because she's not fertile. I'll save my energy, and then I'll expend it all in the second week. Anything I've got left in reserves I'll plug for the third week, and then the fourth week I'll rest. Because in terms of the payout from the woman for your efforts, she can't give you a kid for the first week, then she can for the second, and then she might be able to for the third, and then she can't again for the fourth. But if you're looking, of course, for a long-term survival strategy as well, then having a man dossing around for 2 weeks out of 4 isn't worth it. It's not really realistic, is it, in the long run? I mean, you've got to eat, you've got to drink, you might have to defend. So perhaps the reason that a woman's menstrual cycle is often taboo is because it would pay for men not to know. So just to clarify, before I move on from the example of the sales environment, I might come back to it, I'm not entirely sure at the moment, but I think I'm done with it. you're rewarded for your efforts, but sometimes your efforts aren't rewarded. If you make no effort, you might be rewarded, but that's less likely. And if you make no effort and aren't rewarded, that's an ordinary outcome. So, you try, you might get something, or you might not. But if you don't try, you probably won't get something, but you might. That's what we're dealing with here. And in terms of women and their chances to conceive, what a shock, the same thing applies. You might try to have a kid and manage it. Or you might try to have a kid and not manage it. That would be weeks 2 and 3. Or you might not try. That's week 4, week 1, whatever. You might not try and not get pregnant. You know, there's a correlation there. Perhaps you've rejected the idea that not trying and getting, not trying and being rewarded is in some way an unrealistic thing to talk about. And this is perhaps because you are trying, but you're not trying as hard. If you're dealing with degrees of polarity, then what you're really talking about is extremism, which hopefully I'll remember to get to. But what I'm saying is, if you're working in a shop that's selling something, and you ignore every customer that comes through the door and refuse to serve them, you're not trying, and you're unlikely to be forced into making that sale process. But it is still a possibility. As I said, some people are hot sales, they just want the stuff anyway, and they will essentially force you to give them money. I think I had somebody on YouTube say this recently, that they just want to give you money. What's the matter with you? Can you just, often in relation to Steam, I think it was, or the difficulty of purchasing online things. Amazon, for instance. I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So there's that. And yeah, now I think I want to explore the process by which women get men to work relatively consistently, despite them not being able to hold up their end of the bargain in all cases. What I'm referring to is a man will work every day if he needs to, but he won't be able to be rewarded every day by the woman because she literally can't. And this is because the reward in this case, in this example, is his progeny. This is childbirth, children. Right? That's the reward. If you're a man, you can't know. You can't know when your woman is fertile or not unless she tells you. But how often does that happen? Most men are oblivious to women's ability to conceive at any one time, especially the people that you don't know. Why would you need to? But anyway, that's besides the point. So how does the woman get the man to go to work, right? How does that happen? Well, if it's a woman you're looking to have kids with, then it's to provide for the possibility of kids. It's to get the possibility of kids and provide for the possibility of kids. That's why you go to work. That's the long-term sell anyway. And as a man, you're encouraged to go work, hard all the time, in the hope that you get monetary rewards in the case of the sales environment. But the woman can't give you the reward that you seek all of the time, which puts her in a difficult spot. It puts her in a difficult spot because she either has to acknowledge to the man that she can't conceive at that particular moment, and essentially say, well, you know, you may as well not try. We may as well both go and risk our lives because I can't conceive right now. Or she can pretend that she's able to conceive at that point, which is a risky strategy long term. Or she can deny your efforts or your accomplishments. And I'm sure there are probably other ways of dealing with this interaction. But this is my first pot at it, at least. Now, if a woman was to lie about it, not lie, but essentially mislead a man into thinking that if he makes effort and achieves, then the reward is guaranteed, then she is only going to be able to pull that trick a few times. The first time would be, you know, just one of those things. And the second time would be perhaps it was just another one of those things, more coincidence, who knew. By the fourth time, though, the fifth time, the man would start questioning the woman's fertility, and if she's barren, she's unable to conceive, you know, no kids coming from her, then the man can quite quickly see that it's actually not worth working for this woman, because he wants kids. That's the reward, that's the point, that was what he was looking for. And if he can't have it from her, then there's no point working for her. So, women need insurance. And I feel that criticism, I'm getting finally back to criticism, I feel that criticism is their insurance policy. So, this is women's third option, I think. The denial of access to fertility by depreciating your accomplishments is how a woman insures herself against your success. Essentially, if you go out on a charge to succeed, where the reward is progeny, where the reward is kids, progeny is kids. Sorry if I haven't made that clear. If you go out and you win, essentially, and then you come back and you go, I won. Give me my children. Give me my access to fertility. I want my kids now. Look, I won. Right? She's not always going to be in a position to actually do that. She might even want to, but she's still not going to be in a position to do that all the time. You know, being pregnant already is obviously, you know, not something that we're talking about here. We're talking about women who have the ability to conceive and have not conceived already, or at least aren't pregnant currently. That's what we're looking at, right? So what does she do? Well, she can either flat out refuse, which would make you less likely to want to engage in a contract with her in the future. I mean, you should just turn around and run at that point, honestly, because you've done the work and you've been refused the reward. It's a theft of your time. She could say to you, okay, here's your reward, and essentially conceal the fact that the reward isn't actually coming. There is no tangible reward you go through the motions of collecting the reward, and then no reward can be there for collection. Or the third option is to criticize your accomplishments and thereby deny you access that way. It is a woman's insurance. Few men are running around moving from epic win to epic win on a daily basis. Then your criticism from your wife will be her insurance policy that she can't conceive at that point. This is why the analogy of the sales environment was used, because your efforts sometimes yield results, and your efforts sometimes don't yield results. If you're looking for a fertile woman to grant you children, then your efforts sometimes yield results, and your efforts sometimes don't yield results. These are outside of your control. And so you need the insurance policy of a flat salary. And the flat salary in this case is that a woman might criticize your efforts, criticize your accomplishments, make you feel that you've done less than you have. And from a pragmatic point of view, she has really no choice. None of the other possibilities are possible, right? I mean, if she goes no, then she's betrayed her part of the contract. If she goes yes, but hides from you the fact that the reward isn't going to be forthcoming, then she risks alienation. So the only thing that she's able to do is to concoct some reason as to why the reward isn't forthcoming when you clearly thought that it was. You're criticized. And I think as men, and particularly as MGTOW, we should explore this idea further, because it's at the core of why men try. There are hundreds of men in my life alone that try really, really hard all the time. And you know, it becomes a behavioural pattern. It can't just be some kind of culturally taught norm. It just doesn't add up. It really just doesn't. I mean, there would be someone, right? There would be some examples of people not trying. Now, I'm not counting myself in these numbers. I'm not counting most MGTOWs in these numbers, because MGTOWs are in this weird position where they've basically realised that all this work isn't worth it. And so they're disengaging with the idea of working. But one of the problems that I see in MGTOW, other than, you know, actually passing on this information to a freshly born generation, because we're just not dealing with women on the whole, is that our work ethic is suffering. We're lazy people now, we're relatively speaking at least, because there's men that are running around trying really hard because they're looking for that reward, and then there's MGTOW men who are not running around trying really hard because they're not looking for that reward. How do we get around this? And I think the way we get around this, I think the way we deal with this problem is to understand the role that criticism and praise have in our lives. I think this ties in with perfectionism in a sense, because perfectionism is the pursuit of ultimate reward for ultimate effort. And I hope I've just shown you all that some things are, at least biologically speaking, outside of your control. You cannot always attain maximum reward. And with the sales example, quite a lot of industries are built in a fashion where maximum effort doesn't yield maximum reward. The perfectionist will either do something because they know they can succeed, or they won't engage in it. Essentially, maximum effort, maximum reward. You move the goalpost, and then you build into that the new reward setup. Or you completely ignore something. You ignore any knowledge of it. You ignore any attempts to do something. And you do this because you can't afford to spend the energy trying because you're already doing something else. Or you don't think that you can beat the current hierarchy, or you believe that something is outside of your physical scope, or mental scope, or because you're geographically separated from the competition. I mean, any number of rationale can be used to explain why something isn't worth pursuing, and for the perfectionist, this is doubly so. You're of the firm conviction that effort deserves reward, and if you are going to try doing something, then you want to ensure that you're going to have a good shot at it, a good shot at yielding the reward. It's the reward that you want, not the effort. And I feel you want this because you're unused to receiving criticism, perhaps. Or you're too used to receiving praise. I guess that's kind of the same thing. Avoiding criticism is entirely natural because somebody has authority over you when they are criticizing you. Or at least they seek to have authority over you when they criticize you. I mean, if you doubt this, then when you go to work, criticize your boss. See what happens. And maybe part of the reason that people hate brown noses so much is because they praise their boss, and at an instinctive level, I think criticism and praise are the same animal. You know, if you're in a position to dole out criticism, then you're also in a position to dole out praise. If you are not in a position to dole out criticism, then your praise is meaningless. This so-called constructive criticism, that's essentially just just a way of describing the spectrum of criticism and praise. You know, performance reviews and so on. These are a mixture of criticism and praise. But note that they're not called destructive praise. There's clearly a hierarchy, there's clearly an authority involved when you're receiving constructive criticism or destructive praise. You're not giving constructive criticism to somebody who is above you. Really, you shouldn't be doing it to your peers either, unless you're, unless you've really got their trust. So yeah, it's how it is. Women are in a position to dole out criticism and praise. It doesn't have to be spoken, it doesn't have to be vocalized. It can merely be access to or denial of her fertility. And if you also believe that this criticism and praise is directly related to your efforts, then I'm afraid you are deluding yourself, because they can't be. The woman in the case of fertility is not always in a position to reward you. But in order to cover up the fact that sometimes she is and sometimes she isn't, she has to either cope with your lack of effort, cope with your lack of effort and the associated limitations of the resources that you can get, or she can essentially minimize the accomplishments that you achieved during that effort. So you see, it's fairly straightforward, really. The idea of perfectionism is it leads people, I think, to conclusions that the world isn't working by their song sheet. And I mean, speaking personally, perfectionism doesn't yield the results of the effort that you put into something. And in the process of putting in so much focus and effort on something in pursuit of higher rewards, you ignore a whole bunch of other stuff that you could have been doing. I think the solution for MGTOWs is to recognize that criticism isn't personal. I think that's probably the thing. It's not a direct sort of accusation of failure. It's just a mechanism of deferring promise, maybe. You might be criticized to merely put you off the scent until your woman's fertile, or until it's closer to payday. No, I'm going on a bit here, and yeah, it's my first video, so go figure. But I want to touch on extremism as well. I mentioned Stardusk at the beginning of this video, or at least I hope I did. I'll be honest, it's not my first take. The message that he was putting out in this most recent video was that he was at heart an extremist. And he spoke frankly about his own personal extremism and how he recognizes it in other people. And I see the work that he puts into his videos, especially the ones on language, the topics that he picks apart. They're incredibly detailed. It's an incredibly strong work ethic. The idea that you're stuck being an extremist or stuck being a perfectionist, I feel, is a hangover from blue pill thinking. I think once you can recognize that things don't have to be right, don't have to be perfect, don't have to be the best, once you can recognize that and be okay with it, then you've become more independent of the influences of women than you were previously. It stands to reason that women would want you to be a perfectionist. It's spoken of in hypergamy. If you can be convinced to strive harder and therefore more likely to be rewarded with greater results, then this feeds into women's hypergamous nature. They want more and better stuff, so they want men that try harder and better, and so we do. We're we're cultured into the idea that perfectionism is an attainable goal. Go for it. Push hard. You'll be rewarded. But that isn't the issue. The issue is that the criticism and the reward that you might receive from trying hard, they're outside of your control, and they're possibly even outside of the control of the woman issuing both. The extremist and the perfectionist are essentially the same thing, and you're banking on high reward, or you're not interested. You're assuming that doing something that's further along the line, a new personal best, if you like, of some activity, is going to yield the result that you were looking for, without accepting that the result is often not totally within your control, and that you might be issued with criticism that was undeserving, or indeed praise that was undeserving as well. You know, if either of these things can happen, then your efforts should be, lessened, or the importance of your efforts should be lessened. I think it's how MGTOW can move on. In the lethargy of MGTOW men is an issue. I see it in myself. I see it in other commentators. I see it in other crossovers in the manosphere, the MRAs and P-ways. They try to try. They try to want to try, but somehow they just can't. And it's maybe because we need to acknowledge that the criticism that we might get for trying, criticism we might get for going through the motions is a fabrication, is irrelevant. The point is that we did a thing and we got something for it, right? And trying to not do a thing so that we break even is putting too much capital on our own worth, in a sense. You've got to be open to criticism. No, I could have made this video months ago, maybe, but I didn't, and I hadn't thought of this until I watched the video. But I had other topics. Why have I waited so long? Because I didn't want to be making mistakes. So yeah, criticize away, because you're essentially doing the same thing as running faster, or killing more animals, converting more sales, writing more books, being referenced more times if you're an academic, getting a higher rating from the government for your school, or delivering more pizzas. Any number of things. You're selling more skateboards. You're hoping, in the process of doing this, that the rewards you get will be commensurate with the accomplishments that you achieve. Perhaps they are, perhaps they aren't. Anyway, I'd thank you if you have made it into this into the nether regions of an hour listening to me on my first upload. Genuinely, I thank you if you have made it this far. Yeah, think about the role of perfectionism. Think about how criticism and praise are tied together, and how they can be used to impact on the rewards that you receive for the efforts. Think about those social contracts you put in place. Right? I mean, stupid examples work, right? You remember back to your blue pill days. You're going out for the night. So you go out into town. You buy a new outfit for the party. Sometimes you look great, apparently. Sometimes you don't. That ain't real. That isn't people actually objectifyingly looking at your fashionable attire and saying one thing or another about it. They're just deferring their ability to reward you. And I think if we can see and acknowledge that criticism and praise are essentially mechanisms by how this is issued, then perhaps we can move forward. So we'll help make the discussion more fertile again. Anyway, this is MGTOW Gomez, thanking you on the nearly 58-minute mark. Have a good day.